everybody. Hope you're having an amazing day. Welcome to another episode of Salon Marketing Live. I'm Stephanie Mitchell, and I'm so excited to have a special guest with us here today. We've got Piper DeYoung. Thanks so much for being here, Piper.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I am so excited to be here. I'm so giddy.
Yeah, we're so giddy. We're so glowing. And guys, today we're chatting all about branding for your beauty business. So what that means is essentially creating the designs, creating the vibe, the personality of your business. And it's something that all of us need to think about and take seriously. And fortunately for us, Piper is an absolute expert in this. So today she's going to take us through A to Z, everything you need to know about branding, design, and in general, what you need to do to make sure that your salon is represented in a really beautiful, professional, and unique way online. So I'm so excited to jump into this topic today with you, Piper. First of all, can you go ahead and introduce yourself for anyone who doesn't know who you are, and maybe just tell us a little bit about what you do, what your background is, etc.
Yeah, well, I'm like, what do I do? No. Well, my name is Piper, obviously. I am based in Southern California. I am a brand mentor for hairstylists and makeup artists. And really my goal is to help hairstylists, makeup artists, salon owners style their business through branding and design. And so I geek out on design, logos. I'm the person that walks into like a store and I'm like, ooh, why did they choose that color? Ooh, look at that. So that is just how my brain works automatically. But I got my start in the beauty industry per se. I was working as a makeup artist and I worked for MAC Cosmetics behind the counter, kind of started there, but I knew I really wanted to grow my business as a freelancer. I loved weddings and I saw there was a lot more financial freedom if I were to freelance and be able to build my own business and not necessarily work behind the counter. So as I was building my freelance business, I also like to say I landed my first real big girl job in an office corporate setting, you know. And while I was freelancing on the weekends, Monday through Friday, I was working in marketing and events, specifically in the spa industry. So still beauty, but just like a different side of the industry.
Yeah.
And I love that I got to experience kind of so many different areas of the beauty industry, right? So I did marketing events and would be freelancing on the weekends. And really what I learned on the like Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 marketing, corporate side was all about branding, design. That's where I learned Photoshop, taught myself how to use Photoshop, and kind of fell in love with the creative side of business and storytelling and really communicating through visuals what your business does, what your brand is all about, what it stands for. So I did that for an amazing company for several years and I loved it. But then as I grew my freelance business, I was like, how do I take this and apply it to my own business now, right? 'Cause I am my own business. I am my own brand. How do I take the same way Target thinks about their brand and apply it to myself, right? So that's kind of when I left that and I went full-time into freelancing, and I worked primarily with brides. That was what I loved. And I stepped away from that, though, about 3 years ago now when I got pregnant with my daughter. And so that was another like turning point too. So I'm like, do I go back to freelancing or do I do something else? And really at the end of the day, it fell back on, I love helping people be their best version of themselves, right? Online, through visuals, through colors, and really telling that story the same way I did for my brand. Like I loved helping people do that. And I would find myself, you know, having conversations with my friends who were hairstylists or whatever, and they're like, well, how do I do this? Or how do I create a website? And I'd be like, sit down, let me show you how to do it. You know?
You couldn't help yourself. You just loved it so much, right?
Yeah, loved it. And that's when I knew I'm like, I'm passionate about this. Like, I'm so passionate. And then with anything that you're passionate about, you're like, well, how can I do this for others? And how can I show up and serve others? How can I provide for my family doing this, right? So that led me to start a basically during that time I was like, after I had my daughter, I didn't go back to freelancing, but I started a community driven meetup here in Southern California for hairstylists and makeup artists. And that was just all focused around business. No technique was taught. It was all just talking business and really having community there. From that, I met my business partner, Jamie Dana, who's an incredible online educator, hairstylist. But
she's so cool.
She's so cool. But we started a business retreat together for hairstylists, makeup artists, salon owners. That is called Ember Retreat. So currently I run Ember Retreat with Jamie, and then I work one-on-one with clients in branding their business, and really helping them also take a little bit of ownership of design in their business too. I never want to be like, well, you only can do it if I do it. Like, I love helping people figure out how they can take ownership of that in their business, because once I figured out how to do that in my own business, things changed for me, you know? So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell right now.
I love that. You've got so many different parts of what you do, and I love that you're so clear about what you're passionate about and why you can help, how you can help people. Guys, if you're watching, drop into the comments, say hi, tell Piper hi, tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty of branding, Piper, because I feel like it's something that's kind of so misunderstood. Can you tell us what a brand is, what it consists of, and maybe like what are some of the common like misconceptions about exactly what a brand is?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's a really like loaded question right there, because actually if you Google, like if you Google like what is a brand, you're going to get so many different answers to that, right? And I think the bigger question to ask is, what is your brand, right? Because your brand is going to be different than the person next to you, right? One of my favorite books, I'm all about books, love reading books, is called The Brand Gap, and it's by Marty Neumeyer, I believe. But basically, he describes a brand as like a person's gut feeling about like a product or service. So again, he uses the word feelings, right? Which I think branding and your brand is such an emotional thing, right? I think that alone, the fact that it's hard to define just tells you it's very personal. Yeah. It's emotion behind it. And I don't think it's just this one box thing of like, well, here's a brand and you disperse it to everybody else, if that makes sense. Yeah. It's like, it's very personal. And then another fun thing that I've heard people describe a brand is often like what people would say about you if you weren't in the room, right? So, and it's very similar to what like Marty's definition is. It's, if you notice, it's not necessarily about you, but it's about what people perceive of you, right? Yeah. So you think branding, right? As you're branding your business, you're essentially communicating what you want people's perception to be of you and your business and how you serve them and what you offer in that experience. So I think it's like, again, it's such a loaded question. It's not just like this one thing. Yeah. And it's a mixture of so many other different things.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like having my own business, I feel like I've gone through so many different directions of like what my brand is, what it means, etc. Like a lot of people think of a brand and they think like, well, it's your colors, it's your designs, it's your logo, it's the visual part. And I know that you work on that side, and I want to chat about that as well. But what about like the other side? How do people kind of start to understand, okay, this is my business, and I guess before you do any of the visual part, you kind of have to really understand like what is my business? Like, who am I? What do I want people to say about me when I'm not in the room? Like, how do you get started thinking about that?
I think first off, you hit the nail on the head. Like, I think oftentimes people just think a brand is a logo and that's it. I got my brand, I've got my logo. Check, right? And it's like, no, again, I didn't even mention that when you asked the definition, because again, it's so much more than your logo, than your color scheme. Yeah. Yes, these are all a part of it. and you'll get there. I think the biggest thing, like something you could start right away is asking yourself a series of questions. Because anytime I sit with a client and we start the branding process, well, I need to know their brand. So I'm going to ask them anything from like, well, how would you describe yourself? How would people describe yourself? That might be a good first exercise, is go ask 3 people that you might be your ideal clients, right? And ask, hey, when you think of me, what do you think of? Because you might be surprised to hear what they say. It might not even be something, they might be like, I think you're really funny. And you're like, I didn't even know I was funny. You know, I didn't know humor was part of my brand, right? And so I think it's important to ask yourself questions. So not only just who are you, what do you want your brand to evoke? Different words. Is your brand luxurious? Is it approachable? Is it affordable? Is it laid back? Is it funny? I feel like humor is a part of my brand. Whenever I'm writing captions on Instagram, I love throwing in humor. I love making fun of myself sometimes. So that's a part of my brand. To someone else, they might be like, well, no, that's not a part of my brand at all, right? Asking yourself questions and then even digging deeper, like, who is your ideal client, right? I know this is like a big thing we talk about in so many different aspects of our business, but when it comes to branding, that is such a big thing. Who is your ideal client? How do you serve them? What do they like? Is the way that you're communicating, would they read, you might read something as luxurious, they might read that as affordable, so it's like going back and really kind of understanding. There's a whole psychology to branding too, right?
It gets so complicated, like how people envision things. I can only imagine.
Right. So I guess first steps, define before you can apply the visual side, right? Who's your ideal client? How do you serve them? What do you specialize in? What services do you love doing? Right? Because if you're doing something you don't love, then maybe that's going to slowly be removed from your brand as you're like over time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So do you feel like when you're defining your brand, kind of like your vibe and how you want people to think of you, do you think it's just essentially you defining your own personality as a person? Like, do you feel like it's just essentially one and the same, or can they be 2 separate things?
Well, again, I think that goes back to each person, right? How do I explain it? Like, I think it's so personal. So for me, my brand is like, it's all encompassing. Like, I don't have a separate entity per se. I don't know if that answers your question. I think again, it goes back to each individual. So you might be a salon owner, right? But your brand is like, so much more. It's so much more than just you. It's you. It's the culture that you infuse in the actual space. If that makes sense. It's the people that are in there, right? It's your customers, it's your clients. So I hope that kind of answers the question. It totally makes sense. Like, I guess it's also a matter of like how you decide to position your business too. So for right now, I have a business that's called Sunny Storm Marketing, but I'm kind of trying to slowly transition that into Stephanie Mitchell, because I don't really want to be like a businessy business anymore. I want to be more just like, hey, I am my business. And I guess it depends on how you want to approach that as well. Right. And I think here's the thing though, with social media, we all use that for our business. If you're not using it, you should be using it. But social media has humanized brands, right? So people want to know who's behind Sunny Storm Marketing, for example, right? So they might connect more with Stephanie versus Sunny Storm Marketing. So I understand like your pivot there, and I think that's a fun. And so when it comes to us as like beauty professionals, whether you're a salon owner or if you're a stylist in a salon, ultimately, yes, I believe you are your brand, right? And it is very personal, and it's again, just so much more than a logo and color schemes and that. So it's really, you're having to dig deep and find those questions. I'm actually working on a guide currently that would like walk people through like how to define their brand and then define it and then now apply like the more applicable visual side of it.
I love that. Okay, guys, so go and follow Piper DeYoung. You can find her name in the description of this. Follow her on Instagram because first of all, her Instagram is gorgeous. And then on top of that, she's creating like all these cool guides and content about creating your brands. So go ahead and follow her. We have Marina here who's watching from Gloucestershire. I'm probably saying that wrong because it sounds very British. Stephanie's here watching from Edmonton. Guys, if you are watching, drop into the comments and let me and Piper know, how do you feel about your brand? Like, if you're being honest, do you feel like you give your brand enough attention? Do you feel like your brand is a good reflection of you? How in love with you are with your brand? Let us know in the comments. Just type like 1 to 10. Do you feel like you're like a 10 isn't like, I adore my brand, like I love everything about it? Or do you feel like you're maybe like a 3 and you're like, I haven't really been focusing that much on it? Because I kind of want to know where everybody's at. I guess, Piper, you would probably give yourself a 10 with your brand.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. Well, here's the thing. Actually, I think your brand and branding is always evolving. It's never right. And so I would say I'm not a 10 just yet. but and I don't know if I want to always reach, if that makes sense. Like I want to keep evolving.
Yeah.
Industry is very trend driven too, right? So I always want to be on top of what's the latest, what's happening, how am I communicating properly to my ideal client? So, but thank you for thinking I'm a 10.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is that my personal brand, like, I feel like I want to chat about this too, because like, I think that brands are only as strong as like you kind of like use them and are consistent about them. And I feel like my problem with my brand is that I'm not being consistent enough. Like I feel like I find something that I like and I am consistent in the sense that like I'm showing up as a person, but I'm not necessarily like showing up consistently with the visual part of my brand. Do you feel like that's like a common problem?
Yeah, totally. I think I would say that's one of the first things. So at our retreat, I teach on, branding your business and design. That's a whole like walkthrough class that I do.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I hear is like, I don't know what my color palette is, or I don't have a logo, or do I use my name for my logo, or and then consistency. That's the biggest one is like, how do I be consistent?
Yeah.
And I think goes back to you need to define your standards and then stick to them.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest one is stick to it. But defining is the big part, really, right? You can't, it's like your blueprint. I was just working on designs for a client who kind of already had her branding down, dream client of mine, she had loved everything. And it was so easy because she handed me over like her manual and was like, this is the visual standards for my brand. So when I created for her, I knew what to pick. I knew what colors to pick one.
Yeah.
And then when everything came together, it matched and it represented her,
Yeah.
So I think going back to create consistency, you need to define some standards first.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I want to chat about that too in just a second, because like creating that standard is something that I've tried to do, but I've never been like strict enough with myself to actually stick with it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump into the comments here really quickly, just to give a shout out to everybody who's watching. Kylie's here. Fabiola's here. Nomsa's here. Kylie says I need to work on my brand big time. Crystal says I'm going through a huge rebrand to get my brand more in line with what I actually do inside my business so that it evolves better. That's really insightful, Crystal. I think that like having a brand that really aligns with like what you want to be known for is so important. And Stephanie says she's a 6 out of 10 for how much she loves her brand. She says, I'm focusing more than ever, but I score this as I think it is a room to grow and only just the beginning of what I am and where I am going with it. Just like you said, Piper. She said, as of lately, I'm targeting my brand more with a presence in my posts and getting more personal with my audience, creating a better flow and branding a logo of my own.
I love that. I love that. So it seems like she has very like clear areas that she wants to infuse her brand, right? And be very, even more clear with her brand and who she is, what she has to offer her client, how she serves them. So I think that's really cool. Best of luck. I mean, that's a great game plan right there already.
Yeah, especially like I love the idea of just having the goal of being more personal. Like in my marketing, that's my goal for 2020 is just to be as personal as I can be. And that is a huge part of that is like making that ooze into your branding.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
Sorry.
no. Say what you were going to say. I love everything about what you're chatting about. So.
Oh, thank you. No, I was going to talk about, the idea of, so again, going back to my book and how you were saying you want to like ooze everything about yourself into your branding. Another book that I love in the branding world, if you like to read, it's called Love Marks, and it's by Kevin Roberts is the author. But he takes this idea of branding even further. So, and he talks about this idea of love marks, and he says, love marks are the charismatic brands that people get emotional about. So if you take away a brand, people will find a replacement. But if you take a love mark, people will protest. And I'm like, I love how he describes that because it makes me think of like, how am I creating a love mark with my audience, right? Just this idea of beyond brand and branding, but like, there's this personal connection. And I love, again, he says that it's emotional, right? So for example, I like to use this example in my branding class, but Starbucks is a love mark for me. Okay. And
for a lot of people, like it kind of like represents some people in a way.
Yeah. And so real quick, crazy story, but my girlfriends and I were driving down to San Diego for a girls' weekend or whatever, and we drive through Starbucks. We get ready to pull into the drive-thru, and there's a sign there that says "No hot water." And we're like, we gasp. We're like, what is this? I'm like, this is how the end of the world is going to be. A little dramatic, but so yeah, we freak. I'm like, oh gosh, Starbucks is down, right? They're closed. Well, what were we going to Starbucks for, right? To get coffee, essentially, right? Right next to Starbucks, there was a gas station. We could have gotten coffee there, right? Okay. But we drove 10 minutes out of our way to go find another Starbucks because we wanted Starbucks, right? Yeah. So when you think about branding and your brand and really personalizing it and really capturing people's emotions, if you think about it, your client can get a haircut anywhere, right? They can get a haircut, they can get their hair colored anywhere, they can get their nails done, but what they can't get is you, right? They can't get you anywhere else. And so that is something to keep in mind when you're defining your brand, who you are, and what makes you really unique, right? How do you serve that client, and what makes you special? How do you stand out? Because they can't get you anywhere else. Capitalize on that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so important for every single one of us to think about, like, if I weren't around, would I be easily replaceable? Am I providing something that goes beyond just like my services or my location or my pricing? Am I like giving people this extra something that if I weren't around, they would feel like completely lost? And like really, really be honest about that. I love that. So, why do you think that branding is such a tough topic for so many businesses, Piper? Like, why do you feel like branding is something, because I know this for myself and like talking with other people, it's like everybody knows that branding is important, but like it's really, really tough to get right. Like, where do you feel like so many people go wrong with branding?
I think people fail to define, right? They just jump in. They might open up and start creating a graphic and using all these colors and saying, this is my brand. Or they might throw up an Instagram post talking about something, whatever it is, their cat or something, right? And unless they define that as their brand and there's some strategy behind that, then by all means, talk about your cat. But I think it just comes back to people fail to define. They fail to ask themselves, the nitty gritty questions who are you? What is it that you're trying to communicate? But branding at the end of the day is you're communicating something, right, to your ideal client.
Yeah.
And you're communicating who you are, what you do, how you serve them. Now, there's just different forms of the different ways that you're communicating, whether that's through a font, a logo, a color, website, an Instagram post. But again, just to answer, I feel like people fail to define and ask those questions.
Yeah. So the first step would be, like we were talking about before, like stepping back and thinking about your unique personality, what you want people to say about you when you're not in the room. What's that extra something that you're going to give to people that, like Starbucks has that emotional connection? What kind of emotional connection do people have with your brand? And then the second part would be defining. So can you chat with us a little bit about what it means to actually like sit down and define your brand?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think to sit down and define again would just go back to asking yourself a series of questions, right? So, I kind of feel like we're like going in circles in here a little bit because again, it to sit down, ask those questions. What do you value, right? What do you, what's your mission? What's your vision? Who is, again, that ideal client? What do you specialize in?
Right.
You know, I do think there is something big in like niching down too. And so asking yourself those questions, again, that's why I'm working on this guide, because I feel like there's like, people get really lost in the defining part.
Yeah. I think what I meant by defining, I thought what we were like kind of going towards was like defining yourself on a branding board, but I guess that's later on.
Now,
what is it called?
Oh, okay. Now you're talking like visual branding.
Yeah, visual branding. Because we've got the emotional part of it, kind of like the personality and stuff. And then how do we start to like translate that into something that we can actually use? Yes.
Okay. So now we're like, let's apply this somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So visually, I feel like I actually made a guide for this. So it's how to style your brand, right? So visually, I think once you go through and define certain areas, I think it's important. One, I think a logo is so important, right? So figuring out what that logo is. And again, there's a psychology even to fonts, right? So if you were to, for example, say my brand is luxurious, right? You might say I'm luxurious. So you might not want to use a font that looks very childish, right?
Yeah.
You might want to find fonts that evoke luxury, right? So, or does your logo scream luxury, or does it seem cheap, just to use the complete opposites, right? And so I would say define a logo, define your color palette.
Before we go into the color part, about the logo, do you feel like everybody needs a logo, even if you're just using like your personal name as a business?
Yeah, I believe that your name could essentially be used for your logo. That's like it's like a word mark logo, right? So it's just, I think that's like the simplest type of logo to create. It's literally words. It doesn't have to be this like elaborate icon with like, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes I think people might overthink and they're like, my name has star in it, so I should have a star that pivots to the left and out of it. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It can be as simple as a font that you love with your name, and that's your logo. That's what my logo is right now, and I'm obsessed with it. So
Yeah, your logo is so cute. So it can even just be like your name written in words, but in a font, in a typeface that like essentially is reflecting all of those things that we talked about before.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
So again, going back to what words did we define, and then how can we find, whether it's buying a pre-made logo if you want, or having someone customize a logo for you, but they're going to use what you define. So again, I'm going to use luxury as the word because it's just it's an easy example, but they're going to look for fonts and typeface that might evoke luxury, right? So I hope that answers on the logo stuff.
Yeah. And then how about the colors? Because I feel like colors are like a huge part of branding, and it's the part that people, I feel, almost find like the most connection with.
Yeah, color is huge. And I actually have a whole blog post on color and the psychology behind color. You can find that over on my website. And but defining, picking out a color palette, one of my like kind of little tips and hacks, if you're going to be doing this yourself, is I like to create like a mood board with a bunch of color or photos, images of like colors and tones and textures that I'm really drawn to and that I like, but that also I think my ideal client would be attracted to these types of colors and these types of tones and stuff. So taking that, making like putting them together, all of your images, and then there's a great tool from Adobe called Adobe Color.
Yes.
It's absolutely free.
Love it.
Have you played on Adobe Color before?
Yeah, it's so fun.
Yes. So what essentially it does is you can upload a photo and it will pull the different tones from those photo or those multiple images, and it'll give you various color palettes, right? So us in the beauty world, we're very familiar with the color wheel, right? So we know color, there's complementary, split complementary, right, colors. And so it'll give you different color palettes if it's bright, complementary, a monochromatic color palette based off of what you put in there. Again, this is if you're going to DIY it for yourself. I just feel like this is the easiest way to go. And it just takes the guesswork out of it, and it's going to give you color that lives in harmony together, right? So,
how many colors do you feel like people should be choosing for their brand?
I like to say between like 2 and 3 colors, and then there's like you're given, like you're always going to use black and white in some of your designs. So that's, to me, I'm like, I don't think there's ever a time I'm not using black and white in design. So that's kind of a given. But I like to stick within like 2 to 3 colors, and then, you know, kind of having like a main color, and then there's like maybe 2 sub-colors. From there.
Like, for example, can you tell us what your colors are?
Yeah, of course. So, I'm like, do you want the, what is it? The hex value number? No, I won't bore you with that. But so my main color is this like really soft pink, which is obviously, you see that a lot right now. It is very on trend, and I'm okay with that, and I own it, and I love it. So I have a really soft pink in there. I have a kind of an orangey coral tone, so it's like, it lives in harmony with that. And then I have a like contrast on the other side of that. It's like a greenish kind of tone with that I use in my colors. And then of course I use black and white in my design too. So
I love the design.
You can see them on my website.
I was just gonna say that I might try to share your website so that people can see like what your website looks like and how you've kind of but have been like taking your colors, taking your personality, and like reflecting it onto your website. Guys, while I'm loading, with that is like my colors that I define and use on my, not just on my website, but also making sure those colors are consistently seen over on my Instagram as well. You know, it's not, you land on my website, you see these colors, and then you go to my Instagram and you're like, where did the bright yellow come from? Different. I love that. So guys, pop into the comments and tell us, what are your brand colors? So like, do you have a main color that you use? Do you have like a few different colors? I'd love to know if you guys like have your brand colors that you've decided on and that you're using them consistently.
Well, when you start using color consistently, and this is when you know that people are recognizing your brand, is when people see that color and they think of you. Right?
I love that.
You know,
for example, like Tiffany's.
Yeah, you can't think of that. Or even like Dry Bar, for example. I can't look at yellow without thinking that's Dry Bar. Right? They have used color so well, and it's just done so perfectly. So they've been very strategic with that, and you can see it, and it's huge.
So I'm sharing your website right now.
Okay.
And I want people to look at, first of all, how gorgeous it is. So first of all, you can see Piper's logo is here. So Piper DeYoung, she uses her name as her logo. And she's got this, I think that is what you meant by this kind of like orangey, corally color, the Piper part of your logo.
Right.
And then you have this like light blush pink color here. It looks like all of your photos are pretty, like they have kind of the same tone to them. Would you call it like kind of warm?
Yes, I definitely like lay more on the warm side of my photography because I feel like that complements the color palette that I use too.
Yeah.
And so, that's something when I look to hire a photographer, I want my photos to be more warm as well. And so.
Yeah. So, and then if you scroll down here, you can see that Piper's got all of the like the buttons on her website, like this one, are that same like peachy corally color. The background here, same color. She's got the white there. She's got that warm toned photo below. Obviously, she's branding herself as well. A huge part of her brand is just her as a person because that's how she's branding herself. So she's got really nice like personal text here. She's got photos of herself. I love that your website is so beautiful and consistent, and it just like everything that you have here. And then if we pop over to Piper's Instagram feed,
it's funny because I can't see what you're looking at.
But you can imagine though, right? You kind of have to memorize it. So if you look at Piper's Instagram feed, first of all, are you a photographer or do you just have a photographer take lots of pictures of you?
I am not a photographer. I'm not a photographer. I mean, I feel like I can take a decent picture, but so no, I actually will work with a photographer like 3 or 4 times a year to shoot different content for my website, for my Instagram. And it's funny because I work with different photographers, but they all have a similar feel and vibe. So it all works together.
Yeah.
And we'll post on that too.
Yeah. And your Instagram feed is gorgeous. You've got beautiful photos and they all feel like they're kind of the same kind of tone too. I love that. They're nice and warm. I worked with 2 different photographers this year, and they were both amazing, but they actually had very different styles. So now I have an issue where like half of my photos are one style, and then as soon as my photographer's done the other ones, it's going to be like not really matching. So let me just come back here. So your branding is gorgeous, Piper, and I hope that you guys were taking a look at her website and seeing just how she's been so consistent and intentional about using her visual brand everywhere. So I just want to pop in the comments. Roseanne said that her brand is black, white, and gold. Tracy said her brand is hot pink, black, white, silver. Lynn Dre says gold and galaxy theme. I can only imagine how badass that looks.
Yeah.
And then Roseanne said black, white, beige, and gold. Awesome. I feel like that's really clean, and I feel like that's a really nice, like luxury kind of look I'm imagining it to be.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I love that. So when we're defining our visual brand, so we talked about font, we talked about color, what are the other things that are important to put? Do you suggest that people have a branding board, like an actual place where they put all this stuff?
Right. So, going back, I'd say logo, define your colors, define your photo style, right? Photography is so huge, which you we touched on that. And I said, figuring out, do you like warm tone photos? Is it cool tone? If you're not shooting your photos, what photographer are you using? And if you're using multiple ones, do they all work together? Say photos. And then the last one is fonts. So what fonts are you using? And this is more for your website or on, if you're creating graphics for your Instagram stories or on your Facebook, Instagram, like that. So I would say those are good 4 things to define and then start using them consistently on your various touch points, right? So yes, putting those all together is what I like to call your brand style guide, right?
Brand style guide. Okay.
Yeah. So, and it could be, people call it a mood board. There's so many different names that you can call it. I like to say style guide because in our industry, we know what styling is, right? It's like we style our clients' hair, right? So I just thought that was a good like correlation together to be like, this is a style guide, right? Yeah. And this is your guideline. This is your blueprint, right? Of how you're going to visually communicate different things about your brand, about the services that you offer to your client.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I do not have one for my current brand, which I think is a problem. And I think that that's because like I've changed my brand so much that like I used to have one and then I found that I kept straying further and further away from it. Do you feel like that's kind of a sign? Like if you're feeling like resistance to sticking with your colors, sticking with your font, do you feel like that's a sign that you need to change your brand?
I think it's a sign that you're not 100% sold out for it then, you know? And so, yeah, I would say it's the time to sit down and be like, okay, does this really define what I'm trying to communicate? Does this define my style? Are my clients attracted to this? And then figure out it's okay to rebrand and restyle. But I think, you know, don't do it too often. Otherwise, people might be like, does she know who she is? You know? She keeps switching it up on me. So I think, yes, give yourself the freedom. If you're not happy with it, change it and then define that and then move forward and just keep owning that, you know?
Yeah. I think I needed to hear that because like I felt like when I first started my business, I had this brand, but I think that I wasn't very intentional when I first created it. Like I had like a lot of really bright colors and like really like geometric designs and stuff. And I feel like I defined that without really thinking about why I was doing it. I thought it just looked cool. Yeah. And then I felt myself like every time I would want to create something, I'd like look at my brand board and be like, I don't really want to do that. So then I would like push towards something else, but then I had this inconsistency and I think like I've kind of like felt a little bit guilty about it, about not having that consistency. So that makes me feel better that it's okay.
I mean, it happens. And let me just tell you that again, it's going to be this constant changing, evolving thing. You know, I already foresee myself in a year and a half switching up things, you know, in my brand. And again, it's always evolving. When you look at big brands, right? Like when you think of Target or Disney or, you know, Tiffany's, it's like there's been a change throughout the year, throughout their years of business, you know? So, I think that's natural and that's just evolving.
Yeah. So here's another really, important question that I get a lot. And do you feel like it's better for someone to hire someone to make a brand for them? Or do you feel like it's better for someone to do it themselves? And maybe which circumstances would one be better than the other?
So again, I think this goes back to the individual. So I would look at the client and, I think so to hire someone that is going to be a costly investment. I think it's a great investment, but I also understand some people don't have that money to make that investment just yet in their business. Yeah. So, if someone was, building, you know, if you're building out a brand new salon and if you're already spending a lot of money on a build out, which I've had several friends build their salons and they're like, whatever I allocated to build my salon, I had to triple that or 6 times that because it's just, it costs way more. So in the scheme of things, it's like, if you're building this, what's an extra $5,000 to actually have someone design everything beautifully for you so you don't have to think about it. So I do think it is a great investment if you're there in your business and you can do that. Absolutely. It's like, think about it. You'll be able to spend time on other things, moving your business forward. Maybe you're focused on more of the visionary stuff or on your team stuff. So yes, I think if you are there in your business and you can hire someone, it's a great investment. If you're not, we live in the best time to able to take ownership of this in our business right now, right? Even when 5 years ago, I don't even know if Canva existed. I just don't even remember when it came.
They just kind of exploded.
Right. So right now there are so many resources for you to find a logo and be able to create a logo and feel confident. There's so many resources out there for you to design your own graphics. I just told you about Adobe Color. That might have been like a designer secret, but it's like, no, you can use it yourself too to figure out how to define your brand colors, you know? So I think we live in a time where it's so accessible to be able to do it ourselves if we need to do it ourselves or can do it ourselves.
Yeah.
But then again, I have clients that are like, I don't even have the time to do it myself. Please do it for me. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I think it just goes back to where you're at in your business and what you're ready to outsource.
Yeah. So I guess if someone does feel ready to kind of outsource that, get a professional like you or somebody else to design their brand, I'm guessing that that it looks different ways. So one could be just making a logo. Another could be maybe doing a styling board. Another could be that plus creating different things for me. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of those different things look like, or what clients have asked you for help with?
Yeah. So I can have clients that can come to me from anything and be like, they need everything. Logo, color palette. We put together a brand photo shoot for them. And I'm creating their style guide for them. They might even have me do graphics for them. They really could outsource everything, right? Yeah. But then I also have, like I said, I had a client that she already had her brand color. She had, photos. She had an idea of what her brand was. She told me what she liked, and I was able to create graphics for her business for her.
Yeah.
And then I also have clients that have come to me and, for example, I've just done their website for them, right? They already had their branding. They had a guide for me, but I created their website. So I hope that kind of answers.
Yeah, that does.
It's a bunch of different things. It could be from logo to creating their entire visual identity to just doing a website for them. So
yeah, that's awesome, guys. In the I just saw Roseanne's comment. She says PicMonkey is great too. I have heard of PicMonkey for editing, so I think it's kind of like Canva.
Great things about PicMonkey. I know PicMonkey and Canva are really top twos out there.
Yeah, awesome.
And it's all about finding what you like and what works well for you, you know? So, yeah.
And I personally, I use Photoshop because I love it, but I also use Canva too. So it's you can do so many really powerful things with Canva if you just take a little bit of time to learn it.
I just designed some Canva templates for a client of mine. I was like, I could have designed this in Photoshop, but I wanted her to have easy access to it
and
edit things. So Canva was our route for that specific thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Guys, let us know in the comments. Have you worked with a designer to design a certain part of your brand before? Maybe you've had someone make your logo. Have you had someone do a style board for you? Have you had someone make your website? Just let us know, have you worked with a design person before for your brand, or are you DIY and you've done everything yourself and you're just kind of no, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to do it. I'm so curious to know, let me know in the comments. And I also wanted to show off one of the websites that you've made, Piper, because I thought it was so, so, so pretty. So let me just share my screen here. Okay. So tell us about Brooklyn & Co.
Yeah, so Brooklyn & Co., she's a great client of mine. She attended, Lynn, who's the owner, she attended Ember Retreat, and we got to talking there, and she's she's had her salon for 12 years, and she's I never had a website for my salon, She
never had a website before.
No, she's never, and she has a great business, but she was I want to have a website, not just for Google search, but like, she's like, I want a place for potential stylists to go find out more information about working at our salon. So there was, it wasn't just, I need to have a website because someone told me I had a website. For her, it was like working for her business too. She also wanted an easy place for, to show off her team on there, right? That was a big thing for us. And then for people to be able to book right away. Because for Lynn, she was saying she's at her salon, she was like, I'm done being the receptionist. And so if I answer the phone, I just want to be able to go, you can go to brooklynandco.com and you can all of our team and you can book with the stylist through there.
Yeah. I'm on the booking page right now, and I love that there's these beautiful photos of all the different stylists.
Yeah, so that was something that was really cool. We got to work on together. I connected her with a photographer, and we went in and we did a shoot that day, and we shot not just headshots for all of her stylists, but we shot some of the product. We got shots of her team working. We got team shots. And all of these we were able to use on her website rather than using stock photography. Right. It's when you land on her website, and there's nothing to get, stock photography is great, and there's actually so many beautiful stock photos out there, but for us, it was really showing the environment, right?
Yeah.
So when you're a potential client, it's like you see exactly what it's like to be a client at Brooklyn & Co., So.
Yeah, I love that you were able to really give off their vibe here. Even the photos, like, did you talk with them and the photographer about what kind of tone you wanted the photos to have?
Yeah, so I actually sent the photographer a mock-up of the website.
Yeah.
And in the mock-up, so the thing with Lynn is she already had her colors a little bit defined. So we tweaked that blue just a little bit so kind of more of a tealish kind of aqua-y tone to match the tone that was in the edits of the photography.
Right. When you say teal aqua, do you mean like the tone of the photos?
Oh, sorry, I meant like the one that you actually see like of the buttons.
Oh, yeah. So like the color, the brand color on the website. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this one,
that's actually a color. That's a color of some of her walls in her salon.
Yeah.
And so in the mock-up, because she didn't have professional photos just yet, in her mock-up, basically I went in and took a photo so I can pull that I use Adobe Color. So I went and took a picture, loaded that into Adobe Color, and kind of was able to get a swatch sample of that.
Yeah.
But it changed in the edit slightly, if that makes sense. So when the photographer went and shot professional photos, I went to go match that color just one more time to make sure it was the right tone.
Yeah, I love that. And I saw that you used that in some of the backgrounds too, like on the review section. You've got it looks a little bit like paint splatters or something. And
yeah. So that was because her floors have a little bit of texture to them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing she said she wanted it to kind of be a little bit more like undone, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so guys, you've seen how beautiful this website is. And Piper was creative about like how she chose the colors and how she made the website look, also based on like what kind of the vibe of the salon is, like taking colors from the walls, taking the texture from the ground, that kind of thing, and incorporating that into the design. So you can definitely be creative about how you do everything. So I just wanted to drop into the comments really quick. Lindre says, Moments Designs created my logo, voucher, and overall design. So Lindre worked with a designer. Awesome. And then Jessica had a question. She said, I've been looking for a designer to help create a style pack. I created my logo using Canva and used a certain font. But everyone I speak to always says that if I use their service, they want to redesign a logo as they never use ready-made ones. I want to create a brand so much, but I don't want to totally rebrand. Is that like pretty common that the designer will want to like totally redo the logo?
I would say, yeah, I mean, that's pretty common. I think it's probably because they want to have, I don't know, explain. I'm like, what's the best way? It's like, it's almost like when a client comes, if I can put this in like beauty terms, right?
Yeah.
It's when someone comes to you with hair that was like already done by somebody else, right? And they were like, can you just take this, but like add to it? I don't know. I would say you kind of naturally want to be like, well, let's start all over, if that makes sense. Like, let's redo this from the top, and then I can get you there, if that makes sense. Hopefully that was like a good analogy there.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's hard.
I wouldn't be surprised if you went to a designer and they said they specifically specialize in creating the entire identity system or style guide per se. But I guess I'm trying to understand. So what is she wanting to make, like a mood board for her brand? So she has a logo, but she just wants the additional elements from it.
Yeah, she said a style pack. I'm not sure if she means like a mood board or branding board, or if she means just kind of like templates. But I guess I can understand what you're saying too, is like for certain designers, like you want to make sure that the whole thing is cohesive, and it's a little bit harder to build a brand on something that might not necessarily match it.
Right. Or that maybe you didn't necessarily do the original concept, right?
Yeah.
But if she has a question, honestly, feel free to email me, piper@piperdyoung.com. I would be more than happy to like dive a little bit deeper and either point her in the right direction on how she can do it herself. Mm-hmm. That way, if she doesn't, or a designer that would be open to doing it for her.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And then Stephanie asked, do you think that even if you're a stylist in a salon, but looking to have my own presence, should I have a website of my own? I've heard this question a few times. What do you think, Piper?
I say yes, because again, you are your own presence, your own personality, your own brand. You're just inside of the salon, or if that makes sense. You're inside, but like you are your own brand, and I think when you think about, it's 2019, right? We're going into 2020, and having a website is also even more accessible than it has been nowadays. Like you can build it yourself. It's so easy. I think it's important to also think about, it's like Instagram is like always changing, right? So you might share your pricing on there, you might share some of your work, but I think your website like allows you to tell your story just even more.
Yeah.
Your website can also work for you, right? So I have a lot of friends that are stylists, and like they have their questionnaire form on there for consultations, you know, like, so it's like now your website's working for you. It's not just like a portfolio per se.
Yeah.
And then depending on where you want to go with your business, maybe you want to become an educator or create an online course or whatever it may be, and jump into that. It's like your website is going to be your home for that, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I think it's absolutely important to have one, and it's going to set you apart from those that don't, you know?
I agree.
Something a little bit to say about when you have a website, it's like, it's just an extra level of professionalism, I feel like, with your business, and somewhat like when you're telling people, oh yeah, you can find me at blankblank.com. To them, I think it's like you're telling them, this is my business. I am a business owner. This isn't a hobby. This isn't something I just do for fun on Instagram. You know, like this is my business, and here's my website. You know?
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, down the road, maybe you're not at that salon anymore, but you still want to have this presence that is essentially helping you to build your business no matter where you go with your career. And having a website also helps you get found on Google. It helps you get, you know, reviews. It just helps so much with so many different parts that you can't, I mean, Instagram's amazing, but you can't rely on it 100% for building up your brand.
Right. And I mean, 100%. There's so many good reasons why, but I think 100% what you said, for sure.
Yeah. Ava, Margarita says hi. She's watching from New Zealand. And Ava had a question. She said, I'm just hopping on. What about if your salon has really bold yet glam colors? So like red and black. I'm afraid that these colors on my website might scare my customer. So essentially, like thinking about like, because we were talking before about matching maybe your brand and your website with how your salon is on the inside. Is there a way that you can kind of like maybe deviate from the design of the salon? Like she works there. I know Ava, she's a makeup artist. So I believe she's freelance and she works inside of a salon, but it doesn't necessarily match her vibe.
Right. So that is one where I would then say figure out how you can get photos in certain angles then where maybe the tones and colors and that specific angle will match your branding.
Yeah.
But it's also, and I'm not saying this to say, oh, well, it doesn't match your brand, you should leave, because you might be very happy there, right? But I think there is something to say in terms of like, should she end up moving on from that salon, something that might be important to her in that next step would be, does this salon match my brand and the aesthetic that I want to show, right?
Yeah.
So, because I don't know, did she go to that salon and then she decided her brand colors, now they don't match, so now we're in conflict, so yeah, we have a little bit of a problem. So yeah, I guess I would say, since you're in there and if you love it and you're happy there, figure out how you can get certain angles, or maybe I think if you want to have some consistency to match you and the space that you're in, figure out how they can both kind of live in harmony together without sacrificing who you are. If you're like, red is not my thing, then don't show off the red areas of the salon. You know?
Yeah. And it's not like you need to have red on your website in order to match that. It needs to more match you as your personal brand, Ava. Yeah. Stephanie says, thank you. This is how I've been feeling. I'm going to go for it. So you were answering Stephanie's question about like having a website of her own. I'm going to go for it. On that note, what would be the easiest way to begin a website? What's your suggestion?
Well, I personally love Squarespace. I specialize in Squarespace design. So Lynn's, Brooklyn and Company is on Squarespace. My website's on Squarespace. Stephanie, I think you said your website is on Squarespace.
Yeah.
But that's just personal preference for me. So, there are so many great templates out there. There's a ton of you could do WordPress. You can do what is another one that's out there?
Wix is also really easy.
Yeah. Wix is out there as well. So I think again, find a platform and figure out what's the easiest for you to design in, and then also kind of functionality that you want for it. But I love Squarespace.
I love it too, and it's really not that hard to figure out.
I'm just truly in love with it.
Yeah, and like there's tutorials that you can do. You can watch YouTube videos, and it's really like, I think the reason that so many people love it is because, first of all, the designs are very elegant, and also it's really not technical to use at all.
No, yeah, really clean, easy, modern, or you can even buy a template. One of my favorite Squarespace template shops is called Go Live, and their templates are beautiful. They walk you through how to install the template, and golivehq.co. They have incredible Squarespace templates. So it's like I said, we live in the best time to take some of that in our businesses. So you can absolutely do it yourself. And when the time is right, you might hire it out later in your business. So,
yeah, when you're ready to like level up, maybe you want a website like Lynn's Brooklyn & Co. website, which is gorgeous. You know who to get in touch with when it's time. Okay, Jessica said, thank you. I totally understand where you're coming from. I just have the logo. Okay, so Jessica was the one who asked the question about like, she has a designer, or she wants to hire a designer to create a style pack, but they said that they want to redo her logo. So she said, I understand where you're coming from. I just have the logo on so much salon stuff, and a total rebrand would be really expensive. So she said that she wants to do like Instagram templates, website, etc.
Has she, I would say that like Instagram, like graphics, like for stories,
probably, yeah.
I mean, I would say you can find a lot of pre-made ones like on Canva or PicMonkey, and then just swap out the colors based off of what she already has.
Yeah, Canva.
If she does have colors, then I would say, she can absolutely do that herself still with like Adobe Color, finding colors and tones that she likes,
Yeah,
so,
awesome.
If she's not there yet. And I totally get it, because that's the thing too, that's like, if you have your brand on, or like your branding, so if you have, your logo, for example, Brooklyn & Co. We switched out her logo a little bit, okay, from her original one. We made a couple little tweaks to it. Now, to switch out her logo on her sign, right, that's going to be a costly expense. She has to get a new sign made. And so I totally get it. Baby steps then,
Yeah, you don't have to change everything all at once and like get all new things printed. I mean, your things should be consistent, but maybe just switch out one small piece at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. And then Ava says, yes, I love my salon. It's very glamour and I'm glam luxe. I'm just afraid of using red as my main tone. My brand colors are black, white, and gold. So yeah, I would say just skip the red then.
Yeah, then just skip the red and find areas where, that gold and that clean white or black come through and use that, and you don't have to showcase, the red. Yeah. I think those are great glam. Like when you named off her colors, I thought glam and luxe right away. So
yeah. That's awesome. Well, this talk has been so inspiring and fun, and so we've already gone over an hour. But yeah, it's been so much fun. Thank you so much, Piper. I feel like you've helped so many people just chatting with people in the comments about branding. I feel like you've given a really good intro about what branding is, how to essentially take your personality and your vibe and make that infused into your visual brand as well. So such a good help. Thank you so much for chatting with us. Okay, so you are a designer, and so you design brands, you design logos and websites and style guides and everything like that. If someone wants your help or they want to learn more about kind of the services that you offer, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm online at piperdeyoung.com. There is a tab that kind of breaks down what it would look like to work with me. I currently work with about 10 one-on-one branding clients for the entire year, because it's like, for me, it's such a, again, personal thing. I become just, my clients are like the best of friends to me.
Yeah.
And so there's that. And then you can find me, a little bit more information about me over at emberretreat.com, which is the business retreat that I run with Jamie Dana. And it is so fun. It's a 4-day all-inclusive business retreat. We have speakers. It's just, there's incredible community that's
Sounds amazing. When's the next one?
Yeah. So our next retreat is probably coming fall of 2020.
Okay, so you guys just did a retreat.
We just wrapped our 3rd retreat in Santa Barbara in May, and It was incredible. And it's like it's such a tight, awesome community of like-minded people, right, who understand what you're doing. And it's so cool to see those girls interact online even after the retreat. So you can find me on there, and then I'm on Instagram, Piper DeYoung. And I always say, if you ever have a question, please reach out. I'm more than happy to, whether you work with me or I refer someone else. I am all about helping people get to where they need to go. So that's like the best thing I can do, is to help you figure out what's best for your business. So
yes. And you've got so many blogs, you've got so many guides about creating a brand. So definitely check out our website. I'm going to drop it in the comments and drop it in the description of this video, guys. So, Margarita. Oh, yes.
Sorry. I was going to say, because I know we were talking about style guides and stuff like that. I do have a free resource on my website. So when you go there, you'll see it. But it's basically a guide on how you can style your brand. Awesome. And it'll kind of walk you through, where you can figure out either to create a logo for yourself, your colors, your photos, your fonts, and putting that all together. There's a little template on there too. And then it shares kind of the 5 touch points that I think are great to get in order and start implementing those your style guide into those areas of your business. So yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to download it too, so I can get all prepared in all of those 5 areas. Guys, go check out Piper's website, download the guide. It's going to be so helpful for you in getting your brand consistent, get it defined, and then just continue to build it so that you kind of become known for your brand as well. So thank you so much, Stephanie and Margarita and Roseanne and Ava. They all say thank you. Ava says she's going to be reaching out in the near future. So awesome.
Thank you to everyone that tuned in and asked questions. This is fun. This is like the best. And thanks for, sometimes it's scary to ask questions. So I appreciate them putting themselves out there and interacting.
Yes, you guys are awesome. All right, everyone. I'll see you again next Tuesday. And again, Piper, thanks so much for joining us today.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie. Bye, everyone.
Chat soon, guys.